Hello, everyone. Welcome to the SIR Medical Student Council annual business meeting. My name is Barun Danda. I'm the incoming chair for the Medical Student Council, or MSC for short. And today I would like to discuss the past accomplishments of the MSC and our future directions. We hope that this meeting serves as an introduction session to all things MSC, while also showcasing our work and also helping getting any interested students involved. This will be especially important and helpful for those applying into the Medical Student Council, and there will be information on the upcoming application process as well during this webinar. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join, and let's begin. So just to go over a brief agenda of this afternoon, we will briefly cover the organizational structure of the Medical Student Council, go over introductions of all of our committee chairs, go over accomplishments of the Medical Student Council as a whole, and then also specifically go in depth in terms of the initiatives and achievements of each committee. And this section will be particularly important for those interested in applying to a certain committee to get a sense of what project the committee is working on and just get a better sense of the workflow of that committee. Lastly, at the end, we will discuss the application process, including the timeline for this year's Medical Student Council applications, and offer some advice about the process. Please, time willing, we will be able to field relevant questions from the audience, so please use the chat feature whenever you can. If we're unable to get to your question due to time constraints, please feel free to reach out via email to either me or either the committee chairs who will present their contact information at the end of their presentations. So here's the official mission statement of the Medical Student Council, which I think is very important to go over first, as ultimately all of our projects and initiatives are created to fulfill this mission statement to the best of our ability. So our goal is to promote the practice of interventional radiology to students that are passionate about the future of IR. It is our mission, with your help, to further propel IR to the forefront of clinical medicine and patient care by providing the resources and the community that will help cultivate the most passionate and brightest minds to our specialty, while also aiding them in their training. So to give a brief history of the Medical Student Council, which I think is also important to go over, the idea for first the RFS section of SIR, the Resident Fellow and Student section, which is the parent organization of the MSC, first started at the SIR annual meeting in 2009, back when annual meetings were still possible in person. So that year, Dr. Vatican Cherry from Kaiser Permanente in LA met with a number of passionate residents who were interested in expanding the clinical aspects of IR, and they decided that the best way to fulfill their goals and pursue their goals were to form the RFS section. So the MSC section actually grew out of the RFS later in 2012, at first focusing on promoting our IR interest groups and symposia across the nation. So that originally was the goal of the MSC, but now that one goal of promoting IR interest groups and symposium is just one out of 9 different committees with nearly 100 members in total, as well as we have another additional group of students involved in the medical student reserves. So the MSC has definitely blossomed immensely from its inception. We are incredibly proud of the growth in IR and also the MSC, and we know that with your help and continued student involvement, we will be able to continue to pursue our mission effectively. So just to go over the Medical Student Council structure, it is led by the Medical Student Council Chair with the help of our faculty and resident advisors. The Medical Student Council Chair is part of the Governing Council along with the 9 different committee chairs, and the MSC Council Chair will meet with these other committee chairs at least once a month to go over everyone's projects and identify collaborations, and also have each of the committees learn from each other's projects and things that have worked and things that have not worked. The chairs of the committees will then meet separately once a month with their respective committee members to receive updates from the members and also identify any obstacles within the committee and essentially keep the committee functioning smoothly. So recently, in the past couple of years, we've introduced the Medical Student Reserves, or the MSR for short, which in contrast to the General Medical Student Council, takes applications on a rolling basis. So as medical students, we definitely understand that there are certain times during the year where we have limited time and our schedule can fluctuate depending on board exams and difficult blocks and rotations. So this is why the reserves was put into place to allow students to help on shorter term projects with limited time, with their limited time. So projects that could range from a couple weeks commitment to a couple months. And the benefit of this is that it introduces students to the Medical Student Council workflow and gives them experience in if they ever wanted to hopefully transition to being a recognized Medical Student Council Executive Committee member. So moving on to introductions. Once again, my name is Varun Danda. I'm a current third-year medical student at Thomas Jefferson in Philadelphia, and I am extremely honored to be serving as your incoming chair of the Medical Student Council. I feel very grateful that I've had gotten involved in the Medical Student Council as a first-year medical student, first as a reserves member, then as a committee member, and most recently as the chair of the Education Committee. Being a part of the Medical Student Council over the last couple of years has been an incredible honor and privilege to be able to interact with so many amazing medical students with infectious passions. And it's been such a great community to be a part of. And I hope that all of you may be able to experience this incredible community as well, and collaboration during your time in the MSC and also in your future careers. Before we move on, I want to give a huge shout out, and I owe a great deal of gratitude to the outgoing Medical Student Council Chair, Ryan Aboud, who's currently in attendance of this webinar. He's been personally a very incredible mentor of mine and has been instrumental in this transition process as I move into his role. And it's my hope to follow in his footsteps and emulate his outstanding leadership and mentorship that has made the Medical Student Council so successful over the past year. I also want to give recognition to our Medical Student Council advisors. Specifically in our top row are our faculty advisors, Drs. Vishal Kumar and Dr. Vatican Cherry, who operate within the Student and Resident Committee of SIR for faculty members, otherwise known as SARC. Additionally, their resident counterparts are Drs. Rakesh Ahuja and Dr. Yi Yang, who serve as the outgoing and incoming chairs of the RFS respectively, who we collaborate with. So shown here are the members of the past year's Medical Student Council Governing Council, but this afternoon the incoming 2021 chairs will be presenting on behalf of their committees. So here are our incoming 2021 to 2022 MSC committee chairs. It's my pleasure to introduce all of them, and I'm looking forward to working with them this year, and I'm sure you will be excited to work with them as well. So just before we go into the committee presentations and updates, I just wanted to go over some key accomplishments in terms of the overall MSC. The first thing I want to highlight is our growth in terms of social media outreach and interest group expansion, which will be highlighted in more detail during the BIORIC presentation. We also focused a lot on streamlining our content promotion of Medical Student Council events, webinars, and IR symposia, especially in the era of the COVID pandemic and the extreme abundance of webinars. We wanted to make sure that this process was streamlined so that students were able to know when these webinars were happening and be able to plan to attend them. We also standardized our application process over the last year, as well as the orientation process for new members, transition process for old members and new members, and also delegation of member responsibilities. We're also very proud of our COVID response in terms of trying to fill the void of certain in-person events such as SIR 2020. We tried to fill that void by having a certain webinar series to cover relevant topics for medical students, especially medical students approaching the IR application process and giving them resources such as the program director panel and the IRDR resident match panel to give them some advice in this very different year. We also hosted several national meet and greets to kind of replace the void of socialization during the annual meeting. We are also extremely proud to have reported that we've had 10+ MSC-driven abstracts that were accepted to national conferences, including one oral presentation. And this is a trend that we hope to continue in the future. We're also excited to have more stronger alignment of the Medical Student Council with the early career section and resident fellow section of SIR. We also had worked on our website this past year. We did a landing page revamp that hopefully made the webpage a little bit easier to navigate. We also have a specific BioDesign portal or webpage on the website where there's all things BioDesign, including information about the BioDesign competition, but also links to the BioDesign webinars, BioDesign articles, and everything else that related to the BioDesign committee in one place. We have also hosted the Away Rotation Survival Guide, which are extremely useful guides for students approaching their first home or away IR rotation and how to succeed. And finally, the VIREG database has been uploaded to the website that provides a continually up-to-date version of the contact information of VIREGs around the country. And the purpose of this is to facilitate it, again, more collaboration among different medical schools to host collaborative events and potentially symposia. So you can see we've had a great year. So I want to take the time to thank everyone who was involved in the 2020 to 2021 Medical Student Council, RFS, SARC, and SIR, and for all of their contributions and making these achievements possible. So in regards to our membership growth, you can see that in the recent years, we've appeared to reach more of a steady state after an abundant period of growth. However, we did have a spike this year from 2,100 to about 2,474, which is a pretty big spike. I think the really exciting change you can see from 2015 to 2021, we've had almost a 400% increase in SIR medical student members, which is very amazing. We anticipate that this trend will be more kind of steady state and oscillate as the years go forward and the IR residency solidifies in place. However, moving forward, we're going to continue to aim to bring this trend upward. So here are some more details in terms of the VIREG and medical student membership. So you can see medical student membership increased by 14% over the last year. But the interesting thing is that we've seen an increased degree of involvement among these interested medical students. So we've seen a 30% increase in VIREGs that have been formed, which is really amazing, and specifically a 90% increase in the DO VIREGs that have been formed, which is also really great to see. In terms of symposia, we've had 21 symposia in 2020 with 15 collaborations among different medical schools. In 2021, we've had 6 virtual symposia, which have done an exceptional job in trying to translate the in-person format to a virtual format due to the COVID pandemic. However, I've had the chance to attend several of these, and it's been very impressive to see the way that these symposium are run to try and replicate some of the events that are some of the aspects of in-person meetings in terms of breakout sessions and panel events. And yeah, it's been exceptional symposia, if any of you have had a chance to attend them. So in terms of other key accomplishments in terms of social media specifically, we've seen an exceptional growth in all of our social media platforms. Most notably, Facebook had almost a doubling of the follower growth, which is really great to see, since this was one of the platforms that we more recently were using to engage students. Twitter, which is probably our most robust platform that we engage students on, has had a 34% increase in followers, which is exceptional. Instagram had a 50% increase, and YouTube had a 43% increase. So we're hoping to continue this trend of a more aggressive social media approach that will engage more students and potentially bring them to our field. So just to go over some broad initiatives and goals of mine for this upcoming year, in terms of medical student membership of SIR, by 2022, I think 2,600 is a tentative goal that we can definitely achieve if we continue our projects and initiatives. Medical student attendance at SIR 2022, which will hopefully be an in-person event. I think having 500 students is definitely feasible, and that'd be incredible to have a more social and interactive atmosphere at SIR 2022 and be able to interact with one another, but also interact with the number of residents and attendings to be able to form networks and get to know everyone. Another big goal of mine, and along the lines of the mission statement of the Medical Student Council, is to continue to recruit a broad and diverse group of students to interventional radiology and continue to identify new strategies to do so. We also want to continue the aggressive social media approach, as I mentioned earlier. As the previous Medical Student Council Chair of Education, I have a personal stake in increasing the educational resources for medical students in IR, and that's something that we'll hear more about in the Education Committee's presentation. Another major goal of mine is to expand the Medical Student Council's footprint in scholarly submissions, so specifically abstracts and manuscripts, and identifying new ways to support students interested in IR throughout medical school. So this includes supporting them at every stage of medical school. So identifying ways to support a MS1 or MS2 versus an MS3 or MS4. There's very different ways that we need to support these different populations. And I think identifying specific ways to do that will be beneficial to our overall field and recruiting and retaining medical students that are excited about the future of IR. In terms of more on the administrative side, refining the MSC workflow is something we always strive to do every year. So cross collaboration within the MSC, also with the RFS and SIR as a whole, is always encouraged. And we will also strive to try to collaborate with other national organizations outside of SIR. We also hope to increase utilization of the reserve section and identify workflows and ways to do so, and then also focus on longitudinal and impactful projects over shorter term projects. So we hope to kind of create more projects that last multiple years within a committee, that multiple chairs of the committee and multiple members of the committee will work on over the years, that will have the highest impact on our medical students. Thank you everyone for taking the time to listen to my updates. We will start hearing from the individual chairs, and we'll start off with Deepak from the BioDesign Innovation Committee.
Hey everyone, so again, my name is Deepak and I'm the incoming chair for the BioDesign and Innovation Committee. And the outgoing chair is Saksham Chadha, who left definitely a very big shoe for me to fill. So I'm really grateful for his mentorship. Okay. And so kind of the main mission of the BioDesign and Innovation Committee is just to expose medical students and early trainees to the process of biodesign and how it relates to IR. I think one thing that draws a lot of medical students to IR is the fact that it is such an innovation-heavy field, and a lot of that is derived from biodesign principles. So the goal of our committee is to help expose students to this and teach them the basics of biodesign and provide opportunities for them that challenge them to think about solving these clinical needs and problems, and also collaborating with attendings and other experts in the field to kind of help you get kick-started with biodesign and in the field of IR. Okay, and so our main flagship project for our committee is the biodesign competition. And so this year, the theme of the biodesign competition is actually IR in the era of COVID-19. And we've been super grateful this year to have 11 total submissions, 2 of which will be presenting their oral presentations during the biodesign workshop at this year's SIR meeting. And from that, 1 team will be selected for the winner of this competition. And so along with the growth of this competition, we've seen an increase in our total number of submissions, but we've also seen really robust webinar series through our committee that helps kind of guide a curriculum through the showcasing of this biodesign competition and helps provide students with the toolkit that they need in order to succeed and learn these critical biodesign principles. Okay, and so moving forward, our goals are to expand our competition to include roughly 20 IR teams. This year we had about 11 submissions, which is a growth from last year, and so we're excited to see future growth. And we'd like to expand even more to international teams. We were actually fortunate to have some international teams in this year's competition, so we're excited to see the growth of this competition and the interest for it. And we've also been able to launch a couple of new projects, such as the IR Innovation in IR series and the short stories in IR, and as well as the clinical needs matching competition, which is another competition that we run in parallel with our biodesign competition to kind of highlight the need and skills that are necessary in order to find and solve these clinical needs. And finally, we've had a regular webinar series, like I mentioned earlier, that goes through the biodesign process. So needs finding, entrepreneurship, how to bring your idea to market. And so we're excited to see the success of that webinar series and expand upon that in the future as well. And so moving forward, we're looking forward to further collaboration with the MSC. We've been building our own biodesign educational series, which we're hoping to collaborate with the education committee in the future, and kind of have one sort of centralized location for that, as well as collaborating with the RFS Research and Innovation Committee for go-to information related to biodesign and innovation in IR. And that's about it. So if you have any further questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to us at sir.msc.biodesign@gmail.com, and be sure to check out our Biodesign Center on the RFS website. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deepak, for that overview of your committee. I think it'll be very helpful. So we'll move on to the Education Committee with Lyndon.
Hello, everyone. As mentioned earlier, my name is Lyndon Lee, and I will be coming in as the chair of the Education Committee this year. Before I begin, I would like to give a thank you to Varun, who was last year's chair. He laid down the groundwork for a lot of the projects that we will continue to work on and help me transition efficiently. The mission statement of the Education Committee is to create and publish education materials about IR that are accurate, useful, and accessible to our audiences, which includes medical trainees, prospective patients, and the general public. I think it's hugely important to realize that we are really trying to appeal to people in IR of all levels to further education in all areas. I think it's very exciting that we, as medical students, have the ability to have this impact on the field of IR. So if you're looking for more information, you can find it on the SIR RFS website under the Introduction to IR section. Here there are many instructional videos and information that are extremely helpful in learning the material and understanding pertinent information for rotations and procedures. So our largest project at this time and of the previous years is the Introductory to IR Curriculum Initiative, which is a collective curriculum that covers the popular topics in IR in a system-based fashion. You may recognize this image from the Boards and Beyond videos, and the general layout for our project is similar. Each module is represented by a system and includes video lectures, a written compendium or outline, accompanying questions, and an associated ANKI deck of the material. As you can imagine, this is a large project, and we have had help from many great community members and medical reserves. We're looking for dedicated people to run and work on this project, as it has recently been approved to be posted on the SIR website as an official resource when completed. This will involve certain quality check processes, but we hope to have an efficient system in place to help facilitate this process. So here we actually have examples of our vascular module, which is nearing completion. As you can see, we not only focus on the IR procedures, but also the pathophysiology, patient presentation, and anatomical factors of diseases treated by IR. Our goal is to present relative material to students in all areas of the disease and really own the disease process. As I mentioned, our vascular module is almost complete, so it has been a very nice template for our other modules. And I think it's really important to note that as interventional radiologists, we hope not only to be plumbers in the arterial and anatomical system, but also healthcare providers and clinicians. So this slide represents the status of the modules at the beginning of last year's cycle. As you can see, the project was in preliminary stages in terms of modules covered. So on this slide, you can see the progress that we made this past year. Most of them have a full compendium and many slide decks completed for their topics. So for this season, we're hoping to find people to begin to work on the other modules and complete the in-progress modules this year to be posted on the SIR website. Another project that we work on consistently are the social media projects. If you follow the SIR RFS on social media, you may have seen some of our posts on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. These are small projects usually led by a reserve or a few reserves that have quick and helpful information on any topic related to IR. These appear in the form of infographics, tutorials, and starter packs or short slide decks. I'm hoping one of our new members will be interested in running these projects and developing new ideas for social media posts. So here's an example of an infographic recently completed by one of our reserves featuring information about pulmonary embolisms. I don't think this specific infographic has been posted yet, but stay tuned for it on our social media platforms. As you can see, the information is laid out nicely in a visually appealing manner that can be read quickly in the form of an Instagram post. It may also appear on other social media forums such as Facebook and Twitter. This next slide features another recent post. It was posted just a few weeks ago in the form of a tutorial about splenic artery embolisms. These posts contain information, imaging, as well as questions that can be completed by the audience as the post progresses. I think the greatest part about the social media projects are that the person creating the post really has the creative freedom to kind of design it how they like. So our last running project revolves around creating a standardized ANKI deck for IR materials. As ANKI has become more and more popular over the recent years, we are hoping to create learning decks that are utilized by members of IR in all areas of training. We recently appointed 3 members of the committee to run this project and will incorporate more members and reserves as needed to help in the creation of these decks. Eventually, these ANKI decks will also include the materials from the IR curriculum project as well that I mentioned earlier. So of course, education spans many different areas, and we hope to collaborate with many different SIR committees this year to come up with more content applicable to different areas. If you personally have any unique ideas, please consider applying to the Education Committee, and we can help get these ideas set in motion because we're always looking for new projects to work on. If you have any questions, please reach out to our committee email address, sirmsc.edu@gmail.com. As I mentioned, we're looking for people to run certain projects and others to help produce content for these projects. Having a background in education or passion for teaching is a huge plus, and we look forward to having you on board. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lyndon, for those overview of all your projects. We're going to move on to Sydney from the VIRG interest group.
Thank you, Varun. All right. Hey, everyone. So my name is Sydney. I'm a third-year medical student at Michigan State, and I'm very excited to be the incoming VIRG committee chair. Our outgoing chair, Norbert Cook, has done a lot of fantastic work throughout the past year, and I'm excited to talk about some of our accomplishments and projects we're going to continue throughout the next year. All right, so the IR Interest Group Committee's mission is to promote medical student interest and involvement in the field of interventional radiology by supporting activities of local interest groups. This entails supporting the creation of new IRIGs as well as assisting active IRIGs throughout the year by providing event ideas, networking opportunities, along with other resources. So there are 2 key accomplishments I'd like to highlight from this past year. One of the items that we numerically monitor is the number of active IRIGs registered with the SIR MSC. I'm excited to say that even with the challenges of COVID, there was an increase in the number of IRIGs from 153 to 198, which is actually very impressive. To register as an interest group, all that you need are 2 members at an institution who are meeting at least once a year to discuss IR. This is obviously a broad definition. However, we like to keep it open so we can create an initial connection with medical students who have an interest in IR and support them as they expand upon that at their institution. Secondly, with assistance from our Web and Technology Committee, a public database containing IRIG contact information was also completed this year. This is a great accomplishment that will hopefully support future collaboration and communication among IRIGs. So another project we've been working on throughout this past year is the Liaison Project. This focuses on interest groups and updating IRIG contact information to provide valuable communication about upcoming opportunities. Each committee member is assigned to a specific region where they have the opportunity to connect with those IRIGs. In addition, we also expanded upon other resources for interest groups, including regional IRIG meetings. IRIG leaders were offered the opportunity to participate in Zoom meetings with other interest groups in their region. The goal of this was to promote communication among medical students and also a place to openly discuss collaboration, challenges, and new ideas. Another project was the IR outreach program. This focused on identifying schools with diverse student demographics, which was defined as greater than 10% underrepresented minority students, and also those with limited resources to explore IR, such as no home IR department or IR faculty to support their knowledge about the specialty. This project also included providing resources for international and DO schools, such as shadowing spreadsheet and a connection with alumni. This is a project I'm hoping to further expand upon throughout the next year. All right, and within our committee, we also have a subgroup that specifically focuses on projects relating to symposiums. Several projects fall under the subgroup, including supporting medical students looking to organize a symposium, updating the symposium cookbook, highlighting past symposium on the website, and planning the virtual medical student symposium. We're also creating a guide to serve as a resource for medical students planning virtual symposia and a survey project to collect data from medical students who've attended these events. Throughout this year, my goal is to expand this project to also include hosting symposiums that focus on specific topics within IR. We're also working on developing resources for IRIG leadership to increase IR interest at their schools. We're compiling unique event ideas such as like a multidisciplinary physician panel or IR Olympic Games to create an event guide. We're doing this in collaboration with the MSC Reserves. All right, and then in addition to those previously mentioned projects, which we will continue into the next year, there are a couple of new initiatives we'd like to start. The first one I'm particularly excited about is the Mentorship initiative. We want to increase medical students and IRIGs in general, their access to IR mentors. So we hope to accomplish this through events that allow students to connect with IR residents and attendings. One such event would be a Zoom happy hour that creates a place for medical students to talk with potential mentors, or a mentor match that would foster relationships between students and residents or attendings. We also want to include an initiative that focuses on undergraduate outreach. This project would include creating presentations and webinars for IRIGs to use to educate pre-medical students about IR. On the VIRE committee, there's also a lot of room for individual projects along with collaboration with other committees. So while these are the general goals for our committee this year, if you have a project idea you're passionate about and can find other committee members who want to collaborate with you, we absolutely have room for you to do that on our committee. And then lastly, this is just a summary of everything I've previously mentioned. With the large increase in interest groups over the past year, I want to ensure that we have the most up-to-date contact information for all of the IRIGs. So that's obviously going to be one of our main goals. We also want to stay engaged and continue to promote IR growth, so and keeping IRIGs involved with the MSC. We want to promote collaboration with symposia between institutions as well as smaller events at each school, and then expanding that to symposiums that focus on specific topics within IR. And then relating to the IR outreach project, we want to assist existing IRIGs as well as reaching out to schools who do not currently have interest groups and provide support and opportunities along with resources. And then we've already discussed the mentorship and undergraduate outreach projects are new initiatives this year that we really want to get going. And then finally, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out to me using the email below. I think that's all I have. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Sydney, for talking about the VIRE committee's projects. We will move on to the Patient and Family Centered Committee with Deep and Tia.
Hi, everybody. This is Deep. I just want to introduce myself as one of the co-chairs of the Patient and Family Centered Care Committee with Tia, and I'm a third-year medical student.
And hi, everyone. I'm Tia. Like I said before, I'm also the co-chair of the Patient and Family Centered Care Committee and excited to be here talking about our projects.
So our committee is focused on patient and family centered care, as the title illustrates. So interventional radiology is a new field, and we have a unique opportunity to make an impact on the field for the future. And so as this field becomes more independent, it's becoming more patient-centered as well. And our committee serves as a resource for both the patients and the trainees to ensure the best care possible. And we want to seek to empower our patients and their families as well, because we understand that we're seeing patients at a very desperate time, and making sure that they feel comfortable and informed will improve their outcomes, and that's the ultimate goal as physicians that we have. And so we want to seek to better prepare medical students for practice as IRs, and also increase patient awareness of the field and what procedures they will be undergoing.
Okay, thanks, Deep, for that intro. Like Deep said, our PFCC committee is really focused on educating patients and their families about the procedures that IR physicians typically will do. So we have some major projects in the works right now, which our previous chair, Alexi, was amazing at getting started and getting some great progress last year. So moving forward this year, we have the Patient Narratives Project, which we already have quite a few in the works, but we're always looking for more members to, at their given institutions, go out and speak with patients. The narratives are basically short interviews that kind of focus on one procedure, perhaps like a uterine artery embolization or a TIPS procedure, where you speak to the patient either before or after they got their procedure, talk about their experience, what they knew about IR before, if they had alternative plans for care, and how they, interacted with their interventional radiologist. We also have physician video interviews, which we're really excited about. I personally was involved in these last year, where we actually film IR physicians at different institutions. Primarily, we did them at Penn, and we did a couple at Brown in the past, but we're always looking for more members to, get in touch with their attendings at their given institutions and film short videos about a procedure, kind of like something that a patient could watch to get the basic information on what a procedure might be, what it would entail, what is the hospital stay like, things like that. And we also have a What to Expect presentation project, which is short PowerPoint presentations that are really at an 8th grade reading level for patients and their families to access, that also go over different procedures. We also have an Ethics in IR project that is more geared towards medical students and trainees. So the cool part about our committee is that we're both creating resources for patients and for trainees, which is a very exciting place to be.
So our goals for this upcoming year are to expand on all of these projects that Tia just mentioned, the patient narratives, the physician interviews, and the What to Expect presentations. And we hope that with these 3 different aspects, we can combine them into one informational brochure that can eventually be handed to patients. And this is basically a one-stop shop for these patients to have a better understanding of the procedures that they're going through. And, if they have any questions, then they can refer to this. And we want to also collaborate with the Diversity and Inclusion Committee to translate this into Spanish. So we want to make sure that these education materials are available and they're accessible for not just English-speaking patients, but Spanish-speaking, and then further translate them eventually. And then we also have a collaboration with the IR initiative, and we want to explore the role of consent and shared decision-making. We understand that medical and healthcare is a team effort between the physician and the patient, and shared decision-making is important because it allows the patient to have autonomy in deciding what sort of procedures and what sort of health track is the best for them.
So like Deep said, we are excited to keep these projects going, and we've got some big goals for the upcoming year. We're really excited for new members. Like Deep said, the brochure is a really big project that we're trying to make accessible to patients. So if you have any interest in, creating infographics or, creating an accessible resource for patients, that is a skill set we're really looking for. We already kind of have a template that is easy to use, that will kind of put the videos and the narratives and the presentations all together. But we're really excited about getting this off the ground and while it's already off the ground, we have quite a bit of progress, but we're really excited to keep adding to it and making it accessible to patients. And like Deep said, we are working with some exciting committees. We're doing this collaboration with the IR Initiative as well as the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, and we're always looking to do more collaboration. I think when we join forces to really help with our patients and families and informing them, I think that's the best way to go. So we are really focused on, creating resources for both patients and trainees, and focusing IR, this really exciting new field that I think a lot of patients don't even really know what it is. So I think we're excited to really get IR out there and create a new understanding for both patients and their families. And if you have any questions, feel free to email us at the SIR, MSC, and patient and family centered care email, and we're excited to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Dave and Tia, for going over your committee's projects. We will move on to the PR and Communications Committee with Emily leading.
Hey everyone, this is Emily Barnard. I am the incoming chair for PR and Communications, taking over for Chase. He was a wonderful leader for our committee, and I hope to achieve the same success in 2021. So the mission of our committee is to provide useful, educational, and exciting content that serves to inform and attract medical students and undergraduates to the field of interventional radiology via social media, blog posts, and advertising upcoming content. Our major platforms that we have currently are Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We're also active on Student Doctor Network and Reddit. So our key accomplishments for this past year, we have been publishing medical student articles that kind of help medical students navigate the journey of pursuing IR. For content researcher, we have one committee member per MSC committee. So we'll have like weekly posts trying to promote IR and publishing the different content that's created by the different committees. The education committee is one that we've worked extensively with. BIODESIGN and diversity and inclusion are the other two we've had a lot of content for. And our content researchers will also promote like different articles like JVR articles and find different videos and guides to also be posting on our platforms. And our Day in the Life of IR YouTube series is a new thing that we just started. The idea is to promote IR, especially due to the COVID pandemic. It's limiting shadowing opportunities for medical students and pre-medical students. And so it's been a fun project that we have going on currently. And we're continuing physician spotlights, specifically for diversity and inclusion, and some DO spotlights. And we are continuing to revamp the IR Wikipedia page. It's looking a lot better, but we want to make it a little more readable, a little less blocky, and have more images on there. So for our social media growth, we've had a lot of growth for our SIR RFS accounts. So you can see the Facebook followers has been steadily increasing. We have a lot of people following our Twitter account and Instagram accounts. Varun was showing the % growths earlier. And I think something that I want to point out is our Twitter impressions. So back from 2019, we had about 400,000 impressions, but this past year we had 1.6 million. So we're definitely creating a lot of content. We're reaching new people, increasing our followers. So yeah, so next slide. So our current projects and goals, we want to continue our Physician Spotlight series. I know we've been working with the VIRIG group to be promoting some DO physicians, diversity and inclusion, to promote other physicians as well. We also will post about any events that are coming up, like different webinars and symposiums that are through SIR. And for Twitter Champ, that's something that we're continuing doing so. We have one medical student who runs the Twitter account along with the RFS committee chairs, and I got to be that person this past year. And so kind of what that is just retweeting different cases that are really interesting and trying to increase interactions on Twitter and promoting content that would be educational for medical students, resident fellows, and potentially even pre-medical students. And we want to continue expanding our presence on online platforms like Student Doctor Network and Reddit, and continue our Wikipedia revamp. And for our day in the life of an IR series, we are continuing to receive video footage. We do all of the editing and posting for that series, and we've gotten a lot of great comments about it, so it's something that we hope to continue doing. Our tweet chats, that's something that's kind of coming down the line. We are kind of hoping to have one for this annual meeting just as a way to increase engagement, conversation, and outreach. And for National and Awareness Days and Months, so this past year we had a PAD Awareness Month, so Peripheral Artery Disease Awareness Month, and that was the posts were really well received for that, and so we want to be able to post educational content per month, you know, for awareness and for national days. So I saw that in January there was the National Without a Scalpel Day, and that was also called Daughter Day. So it would have been cool to have a post about Charles' daughter, or just have some kind of educational post there just to promote posting, promote education, and to kind of increase our outreach. And for new platforms, we have a few in mind, and I won't go into details yet because we don't know if we'll have approval for them, but the idea is to try to increase outreach to undergraduate students and even the younger generations. And we are working on continuing to connect SIR to different undergraduate societies. I know this is something that Chase was pretty involved in, and we're working with the reserves and the BIRIG committees to kind of create some new ways to promote IR to undergraduates. If you have any questions, please email us at the email that's linked below. This committee is super fun. We really get to work with all the other committees. There's a lot of collaboration, and we get to work really closely with the residents as well. So it's a super fun committee, and I recommend trying to be a part of it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Emily. Yeah, that tweet impressions improvement is staggering. So really great job, and look forward to what comes next. So we're going to move on to the research committee with Emmy.
Hi everyone, my name is Emmy. I'm a third-year med student at BU, and I'll be chairing the research committee for this upcoming year. I want to extend a particular thank you to our outgoing chair, Salvesh, who's been done an amazing job with the research committee this past year. So broadly, the goal of the research committee is to train students on how to contribute to the field of IR by teaching skills in basic clinical and translational research, and thereby improving evidence-based medicine and care for patients. Specifically, we want to educate trainees on how to participate, interpret, and share research in IR. We want to focus on all facets of research that are important, which include not only doing the research, but also getting the research out there. We want to make IR research and landmark articles more accessible to medical students across the country. We have a number of projects on how to communicate big studies that are happening in IR. And finally, we want to enhance the connectivity between students, researchers, and IR faculty, especially as the specialty continues to grow. So one of our major initiatives is to expand literature outreach. So our first project is the Future of IR series. So all members of the research committee review 2 landmark articles in interventional radiology research that they choose. They read the article and then summarize it in 1 to 1.5 pages. And then this is reviewed by a resident from the RFS. These are then posted on the RFS MSC website. So this has been a very successful project, and there has been a lot of involvement because all students in the committee are involved in this. The diversity in the articles is very broad, so we get a lot of different perspectives. So this is good for the committee members because they're learning, but also good resource for IR students who are doing rotations or trying to get more experience in the field to learn about the new and exciting research that's happening out there. The second project we have is a monthly web-based journal club hosted by a different school each time. So the committee members can either help coordinate these journal clubs or host one themselves by reaching out to faculty members at their institution or other institutions. So during each journal club, there's usually a short presentation that summarizes 1 to 2 papers, followed by a 10 to 15-minute discussion with faculty members. And then they talk about different questions about the strengths and weaknesses of the study. These journal clubs would then be posted and made available to all medical students. So this is another method and avenue for communicating research in IR. So the second big initiative of the research committee is educational resources on how to perform and be involved in research. One project that really took off this year is the ITROPE, which is the Introduction to Research online program. This is a project that we had also collaborated with the RFS on. This is a web-based curriculum for how to conduct research. So members of our committee helped to generate a lot of content for this curriculum, and we actually just wrapped up our first run this past month, which has been very successful and had a great turnout. So one of the roles that committee members had was to introduce speakers at the beginning of the webinar and field questions at the end. It was a very good way to get to know some of the faculty members that were doing these webinars. Another project is the research white pages collaborations with the RFS. Basically for this, we are creating a set of documents that address any and all things related to IR research, such as data synthesis, formulating research questions, and different types of IR journals. The hope is that medical students around the country have resources they can look into when they're starting a research project in IR. And finally, the last initiative of the research committee is in regards to mentorship. So most people would agree that in order to perform successful research, it's imperative to have good mentors. So we have a couple of projects addressing that. So the first one is a spotlight series, where a member of the committee interviews a physician to ask them about their research and their involvement in IR, and these are then posted on the RFS MSC website. So this is a great opportunity for students to see what their fellow colleagues and mentors are doing around the country. And another very interesting initiative has been the Multi-Institutional Research Initiative, which was spearheaded by one of the residents on the RFS side. So as IR continues to grow as a field and also as an independent specialty, more and more students are trying to get into IR research. However, IR is still a very relatively small field, and not every student has access to research opportunities at their home institution. So the goal of this project is to create a research program that would create a database of students interested in research and then their skill set, as well as research projects that PIs have to facilitate the process of students finding research projects. So in terms of our goals for this upcoming year, so one of the goals is to build projects that introduce medical students to the peer review process. So many students are not very familiar with the process in which how abstracts or conferences or papers are reviewed and what reviews are specifically thinking about and looking for when they read these abstracts and papers. So we want to either have workshops or resources introducing these concepts to medical students. And another thing we want to do, we've been working on, is collaboration with other MSC committees. For example, we've been talking about developing visual media for how to conduct research or communicating landmark article with the education committee. And the last is to connect students attending national and international IR conferences. So in the terms of COVID, it's especially difficult to meet other students when especially all the conferences are now virtual, but networking is a huge part of attending conferences and developing relationships. So overall, the research committee, we want to give medical students the tool to get excited, succeed, and make connections with the IR research committee. So if you have any questions, the committee email is right down there. Feel free to email me any questions you have.
Thank you so much. I mean, those sound like very impactful and useful projects. So looking forward to those. We're going to move on to the diversity and inclusion chair, Camille, to talk about his committee.
Thank you, Varun. Again, I'm Camille Bahi. I'm the incoming chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, and I'm taking over for Dudley Charles, who has done just a wonderful job expanding the scope of diversity and inclusion, and really set the stage for us to evolve as a committee and work alongside many national and international organizations. So if you could move to the next slide. Yeah, so for the next slide, our mission remains to be the promotion of the diversity of trainees entering the field of interventional radiology. We work on providing IR outreach initiatives and contributing to patient advocacy within underserved patient populations. So we also support the efforts of the SIR DNI Recruitment Committee and the SIR Diversity Task Force. So for the next slide, I want to talk about a number of ongoing projects that we have, and also a few new initiatives that we want to announce. So starting off with the IR Minority Treatment Awareness Outreach Program, where we highlight IR interventions as treatment options for disease states that disproportionately affect certain demographic groups. We also work on educating the broader IR community of health professionals on these health disparities, and we also encourage them to address their community's need. We also work on peer-to-peer mentoring mini sessions where we rely on a network of underrepresented and LGBTQ+ medical students. And using this network, we try to facilitate career mentorship between the medical students and the residents. That's another one of our long-standing projects. For the International Outreach Project, this is our collaboration with the RFS International Outreach Committee, and it allows us a number of opportunities within this project. We also work on establishing SIR representation at the SMNA Annual Medical Education Conference, and also with the Latino Medical Student Association in their national conference, where we established SIR representation. We're hoping to continue to do so. We're also hosting a virtual webinar for historically Black colleges and universities. This is an exciting development that's coming up in April. Another project would be the Patient Spanish Translation Project, which is aimed at translating patient resources and content, and we'll discuss furthermore about potential opportunities. So in addition to all of these projects that are listed, we also collaborate with other committees on shared projects that prospective members could join. So for the next slide, so in the past year, we managed to produce a number of physician spotlights that were published, and these are basically interviews with IR attendings who shared their stories and their words of wisdom. And you can see in the bottom of the slide one of the attendings, Dr. Barbara Hamilton, who shared her stories, and we managed to get that published for the broader IR community to learn more about. Another accomplishment would be within the IR Minority Treatment Awareness Program, where we work on producing infographics. One of our infographics was the disparities in hepatocellular carcinoma treatment. Another one would be an infographic on disparities in COVID-19 treatment, and we sort of dug through the different social factors that led to disparities in COVID-19 treatment, which you can see that infographic on the right side of the slide. Most recently, we had a uterine fibrosis infographic that was recently posted for Black History Month. And for the Patient Spanish Translation Project, we managed to produce patient instructions for pre and post IR procedures in Spanish with the really much appreciated help from reserve members and RFS faculty. The products of this collaboration were really promising and helpful, and we hope to continue working on translating patient resources moving forward. So for the next slide. Yeah, so next slide, we want to collaborate. We managed to collaborate with the SMNA. The Sowing Seeds talk with Dr. Newsom was really well received, and it's currently published on the SMNA Facebook group for everyone to watch. For our work with the International Outreach Committee, we finished working on a spotlight series with international IR attendings who sort of shared their experience and described what the state of IR in their countries look like. These are 4 different spotlights of Indian IR attendings that we published. And we also had an extended interview with an international medical graduate who is an IR resident that was posted on SIR Web. It's Dr. Log. You can see him on the left side here. And he described basically his work on spreading IR in Tanzania. As we speak, he is currently in Tanzania working on training the next generation of IR providers in Tanzania. And we had the pleasure of learning about his experiences and the barriers that he faced while trying to work on this project. We lastly also hosted a webinar on racism in radiology in the fall of 2020 with Rowan School of Medicine. We basically talked about racism in radiology and the experiences of diagnostic and interventional radiologists, what they face, the implicit bias, and plans and actual tools to address these issues in the futures. These were our accomplishments for the year 2020. And if we move on to the next slide, we can talk about our 2021 goals. Yeah, so for 2021, we want to increase IR's visibility among Minority Medical Association, which is by establishing SMNA Annual Medical Education Conference presence. We actually, with the help of the SIR leadership, much appreciated help, we managed to secure a booth, a presence in their virtual conference, and we also want to work with other minority medical student networks to increase the visibility of IR. We managed to also collaborate. We're hoping to collaborate on initiatives with other MSC committees, the newly established Women in IR and the IREG and the International Outreach Committee of the RFS. We're hoping to continue our collaboration with these subcommittees. For the spring, we're excited to announce a medical college webinar for the historically Black colleges and universities. So this is basically a webinar that's going to be hosted and sort of aimed towards folks from colleges like Meharry, Morehouse, Howard, Charles Drew. It's also going to be open to folks from the SNMA and the LMSA and the greater SIR community. And it will also sort of increase the visibility of IR and introduce the topic and talk about how this topic can be, how the community can grow within these subjects. And lastly, if we can move on to the last slide. Yeah, so for our prospective MSC members, we want to welcome you. This is an exciting time to join the D&I committee. I think our members have the opportunity to represent IR and work with national organizations, international initiatives, and work with SIR committees to further our mission. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach me at camille@brown.edu with any questions. I'm happy to talk. This is a great time to join the D&I, and I'm excited for the year ahead.
Thank you so much, Camille, for talking about your important projects. We're going to move on to the, thank you, first of all, everyone, for sticking around. I know this is a long meeting, but we wanted to give everyone enough time to discuss their committee, and I think we've heard a lot of great projects today. So we have 2 more committees, the Medical Student Reserves, followed by, last but not least, the Women in IR Committee, and then we'll be discussing the application process in more detail. So without further ado, we'll give it to Lindsay to talk about the Medical Student Reserves.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for your attention. I'll keep mine short and sweet because the philosophy of Medical Student Reserves is getting medical students involved in short and sweet projects. I'm building upon the amazing work that Sid did last year. You can stay here with kind of really growing this community to be almost 200 medical students. So our goal is to connect medical students with projects across the MSC. So it's a gateway to get involved without having a year-long commitment. When talking about our accomplishments, on the next slide, we can see that we grew to 270 active members. So Sid actually grew that number before in the 100s to now almost the 300s. And we have 100 graduating M4. So congratulations to all of them, and good luck with their applications. When talking about our active projects, you can move to the next one, it's okay. I'll just really quickly about our completed projects. I can do it by memory. We had some really cool starter pack education projects, procedure guides, and IR for kiddos. And so under Sid's leadership, we were able to create materials for kids that need to undergo IR procedures, summarize clinical trial summaries for those high yields when you go on your rotations, and then work on those procedure guides. So really our goal is to help medical students in an impactful way. Our new active projects are partnering with the BIRIG group to support undergraduate students in learning about IR, whether they're pre-meds or biomedical engineers. We also want to create a more robust support for people looking for research, so stay tuned for those efforts. And we also want to increase community outreach. So we want the Medical Student Council reserves to be accessible to everyone. And we would love to create a community where everybody knows someone interested in IR. And so if you're interested in any of those initiatives or you have your own ideas, feel free to reach out to me. I think on the next slide has my email address, the official SIR reserves@gmail.com. I would love to talk to you, and I welcome any and all of your applications.
Thank you so much, Lindsay, for that overview. We're going to skip these slides and go to the Women in Our Committee, led by Simone.
Hey everyone, I'm Simone. I'm a third-year medical student and have the pleasure of kickstarting this newly created Women in IR Committee. So kind of the purpose of the committee. So there was a paper that came out a few years ago that identified only about 10% of women are IR physicians, and only about 15% of fellows make up, of women make up the IR fellows. Now, of course, like the numbers have increased gradually over the years, but there's definitely room for improvement. There's another few papers that looked into this further and identified that one of the biggest limitations or concerns that female medical students have when applying to IR was the lack of female mentorship. So stuff like the Women in IR Committee is why we created this. So the mission is to support women in the field of interventional radiology and increase the female student recruitment into the field. We're going to do this by providing networking and mentorship opportunities to the female medical students, as well as highlight the achievements of women in the field in general. And of course, we would like to collaborate with the support and efforts of the RFS and ESC Women in IR committees as well. So goals, this is a new committee, so I don't have, accomplishment slides or anything like that. So this is starting from scratch and looking towards the next year. So for this year in general, I have a few project ideas that I'll discuss shortly. And of course, there's lots of room for any new projects because we're starting from a clean slate. Collaborate with the RFS and ECS committees on their our respective projects, as well as collaborate with the other MSC committees here. And in general, the biggest goal is to increase the numbers. We want to increase female representation within the field. So what I mean by that is, increase the numbers for the SIR membership, the MSC membership, increase the number of residency applications and matched applicants, see those numbers rise over the years. So kind of splitting this up of, the two main missions of increasing mentorship and also celebrating women. So the first part of the mission of increasing mentorship. So the first major project is the Women in IR virtual hangouts. This is something I actually started last summer, where we just hosted a series of small get-togethers with the female medical students and then some residents or fellows and attendings, and it was just an open, safe space of discussion, whatever. And this is a broad definition on here just because it was an open discussion, so it was not your standardized Q&A panel or interview style like that. It was just open discussion, whatever the students at that time wanted to talk about. That was kind of the topic of discussion, and it was really successful. We've had 10 sessions so far, looking at, accommodating about 100 students and maybe about 40 or 50 residents and attendings. So it's been really great. We just recently finished one last week. So it's still moving. So this is going to be a permanent platform in collaboration with the RFS and ECS committees. And, because COVID, there's already a decrease number of women faculty at symposia and conferences, and that's kind of what students have relied on to gain that female mentorship. COVID obviously decreased these chances even more so. So this was kind of an effort to figure out what the best alternative is, and it's actually been really great because you might have gone to the symposia and there might have been like 2 female faculty, whereas with these virtual hangouts we automatically get like 10. So this is something we would like to do moving forward. And then with further mentorship, having more one-on-one sessions, so having CV or personal statement workshops or having mock interview workshops where we can do a little presentation or collaboration, but then also pair students off with a resident or attending or program director to be able to practice their skills and help strengthen their applications in preparation for interview season. And then lastly, trying to develop a long-term mentorship platform. We're still trying to figure out how we want to approach this, if we want to formalize it doing like a match or big sister, little sister, or if we just want to do it based off of like an open forum on the SIR webpage. So this is up open for ideas for anybody who would like to take on this project. And then kind of the latter half is just celebrating women. So the Women in IR spotlights is the biggest thing. So, other committees have had their physician spotlights or the GO spotlights. We're going to have one for Women in IR specifically. I think what's going to be the biggest difference between doing it in this committee and other committees, I highlighted here, is I would also like to highlight female medical students, because there are a lot of female medical students who have done amazing things within the field of IR before even starting their training. And I think it's important that we highlight those achievements and get them that exposure as well. And then women's treatment awareness, similar to what the D&I efforts are for highlighting diseases and procedures, looking at underrepresented populations. So this will be kind of in collaboration with the D&I committee and also the education committee by creating these infographics or content to help educate people specifically on women's health or women-related procedures. So that's kind of the main projects I have going on. So of course, as you can see, there's lots of room for new project ideas. So if you are interested in applying or have any questions about applying for the Women in IR Committee, the email's listed here. Again, we're starting from a blank slate and starting from scratch. So it may be a little bit busier than anticipated, but that's just to kind of kickstart these projects, and then it should be smooth sailing from there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Simone, for those for an overview of your very important projects for the year, and look forward to seeing how the committee grows. And thank you to all of our committee chairs. That concludes our committee's presentations on their committee and all the projects that they are hoping to get done during the year.
So thank you to everyone who stuck around. The last leg of this webinar will be me talking about the application process. So I have a timeline on the next slide. So essentially, the application will open this week, the first week of March. And the applications will be available at rfs.sirweb.org, and it'll be heavily advertised. So we'll be sending emails through the VIRIG email addresses. We'll be promoting on social media. We'll be promoting on SIR Connect. So hopefully everyone will be aware that the applications will be opening this week. In terms of when the applications are closing, that would be on March 21st. So it's about 2 to 3 weeks to get your application in. And it's important to note that any applications received after March 21st, 2021 will be considered for the medical student reserves. So make sure to get your application before this deadline. Then from March 21st to April 4th, that'll be the period where applications are under review, and all applications will be read and evaluated by our governing council chairs. Then tentatively on April 5th, decisions will be finalized, that all applicants will receive an email from the Medical Student Council that states if the applicant has been accepted to the executive committee or reserve or unassigned. These dates are mostly locked in, but they may be subject to change depending on the MSC scheduling. But hopefully by April 5th, we can get the decisions out and get the year started. So in terms of tips for successful applications, what we are looking for in general are highly motivated thinkers and doers. So we're looking for team players who are willing to make adjustments and are flexible, and people who enjoy collaborating with other people and working together to collectively improve an organization and to achieve our mission statement, which is ultimately to promote IR to medical students as a clinical specialty. So in terms of applying to a specific committee, the one thing I would definitely recommend that you do is do your research extensively. So definitely rewatch parts of this webinar to understand what each committee is doing and the projects they are involved in, but also go deeper. You know, if they mention a project that you're interested in, try to identify where that project is on the SIR RFS website or YouTube channel or social media, and really understand what that project is about and what you could potentially offer that project to improve it. We also recommend providing succinct but high quality answers, detailing the relevance for your achievements or previous leadership experience, and putting them in the context of how it'll translate to your success in the Medical Student Council. We wouldn't recommend just copying and pasting your CV, but rather tailoring your application to kind of a specific project that you want to work on or a specific skill set that you have, and really emphasizing how that will be an asset for the Medical Student Council. One thing we really do like to see, if you have been involved in, is emphasizing any local or regional IR efforts that you've been involved in. So if you have been a part of your local advisory for the last couple of years, or you've helped with the symposium, we'd really like to hear that, because that's the grassroots efforts of the SIR Medical Student Council, and it's really great to see that our applicants are working on that, as it's essential for us to achieve our goals. In terms of other tips, we would recommend, if it's possible, to provide tangible deliverables or skills. So for example, if you have art or writing skills, definitely include a portfolio of your previous work if you can, or if you coded a website, include a link to that. Or if you had an educational PowerPoint for teaching, include that. And that'll be a great way to showcase your skills rather than just telling us about your skills. Also highlighting relevant skill sets for specific projects. So really, if there's a project that you identify that you have a specific skill set for example, if you have a lot of graphic design experience, you could say that you would be an asset for the introductory IR curriculum, for example, and showing that you could potentially create figures for the curriculum and tailoring the figures to a medical student audience so that it's easy to understand the material. The other option, which is definitely more difficult but more impressive, is proposing an innovative idea for a new project. The one caveat with this that we would recommend is first looking at existing projects to ensure that your project isn't redundant or repeating an existing project. But if it seems like it hasn't been done before, you could definitely propose a new project and include relevant details such as the project timeline, proposed endpoints and accomplishments, required resources, which helps us know that you took some time to think about not just what the new project would be, but how you would put it into place and what the systems would be in terms of putting that project into place and into motion. So here are just some examples of anonymized examples of successful applicants. Some themes that we just wanted to highlight are, they included metrics, so very specific numbers in terms of this person connected 20+ students with physicians as shadow and held weekly sessions with 15+ students and weekly 2+ office hours. This really gives us a more concrete idea of what you did in these positions and allows us to better understand your application. You can see on this, the second application, this person secured 10K in funding for their projects. So that's like really great to see, and that gives us an idea of what they did exactly. So here we have two other examples of successful applications, this time focusing on the other part of the application, which is regarding how you would expand a project idea for the committee that you're applying for, or potentially even suggesting a new project idea. So we highlighted certain aspects that we found mostly notable. You can see in this application on the left, this student mentioned specific examples from their own experience in their IRIG at their home institution that kind of led them to propose an expansion for a project idea. And they even linked their IRIG website to kind of give us a better idea of what they are referring to when they talk about this in the application. On the right side, I think this is an example of the student proposing a new project idea, and they specifically mentioned their own experience with an attending that they know, and kind of expanding that model of a free venous clinic to other IRIG groups and potentially other IR institutions. So leveraging and mentioning their own experiences and how that will be successful in potentially expanding that project to the MSC as a whole is a good approach when it comes to this stuff. So that's all I have. First of all, thank you all for attending and taking time out of your Sunday. And for those of you listening via recording, please feel free to reach out anytime to sir.students@gmail.com to reach out to me, the MSC chair, and all of the committee chairs also have included their contact information throughout the presentation. One thing we would definitely encourage you to do if you're interested in applying is definitely check out our SIR RFS website at this link here, rfs.sirweb.org. And specifically, if you want to look at the medical students section, you can navigate there as well. If you do use any social media platforms, we greatly appreciate if you would follow SIR RFS on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And yeah, thank you everyone for attending. It's been a pleasure hosting this meeting and hearing all the exciting things that the MSC is doing and will continue to do over the next year. And I look forward to receiving your applications. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.